All right. Thank you to all of our participants and viewers at the Demand Gen Summit. This is our fifth semi-annual DGS event. So we're super excited to have you all, especially for that keynote. I mean, fantastic. A big thank you to Dave Elkington, Rick Tolman, Mark Mon for joining us. Even though we had a couple of those technical difficulties, and to those of you that were able to watch that for putting up with a little bit of that. But again, fantastic presentation. I was thinking about going through the profiles. I mean, these guys have over 60, 65 years of combined experience in the B2B marketing technology, and just to be able to hear kind of that wealth of knowledge that they had to share, just fantastic. They hit the highlights. We're going to have that presentation that is pre-recorded now in that video feed. So again, you can go back if you missed anything, you can watch it there. And here we're going to kind of dive in as we're going into some live presentations throughout the day. I'm going to go through what to expect. Again, bring up some of the awardees in case you missed that earlier on, and go from there and get some thoughts here as well from our sales director, Steve Aaron. He'll be joining us here shortly. So as we go, let me go ahead and show a little bit of that agenda. Now, if you're on the event page or you're joining us on LinkedIn Live or YouTube, you'll be able to find this agenda at demandgensummit.com. There you'll see the blocks of pre-recorded presentations by 27 plus speakers, and that's going to be available and released at the top of each hour. So at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we had our first block released with our speakers and their presentations, and then we'll have another block released at 11 a.m. Pacific time again. And then finally, the last one will be released at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So look forward to those. Now, as those are being released, those presentations there for this 4-hour event, we are going to have, again, that keynote presentations on the website there. Excuse me. So you can rewind, listen to that. Everything's available on demand for the next 30 days. So you'll be able to come back, access this information, share with a coworker, or friend, and be able to have that information there. Now, diving back into the agenda that we're seeing today, we just heard from our keynote, and then we'll have some commentaries here and updates. But then we're going to have our live presentation. John Miller, CMO of Demandbase, Billy Bateman, co-founder of Signals, will be joining us around 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Getting my time zones mixed up here. But yes, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, John Miller, CMO of Demandbase, and Billy Bateman, co-founder of Signals. After which our next live presentation will be Sengram from co-founder of Terminus and co-founder of GTM Partners will be joining us at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And again, that'll be with the Billy Bateman, co-founder of Signals. So a little bit of what to expect. Again, some pre-recorded stuff, some live presentations. We did that based on feedback from last events. Keep this engaging and of course, up to date with what we have coming up next. So with that said, though, let me go ahead and bring on some talk about some of the additional awardees that we announced. Billy Bateman, again, brought this up at the beginning, but in case you missed it, we did have the most participation in our events that we've seen up to this point for the awards. We had 4 award categories: Demand Gen Sales Leader, Thought Leader, Podcast Marketing, and our final one was Demand Gen Practitioner. So of those, we had about 10 to 25 nominees in each of those award categories. You can find those again at demandgensummit.com by going to awards, and you'll see the winners now going from most votes, and these are crowd nominated, crowd voted. From most votes left to right, you will see in each category who those winners are. Just for time's sake, I won't go through all of our award winners' names, but we are having those posted. There'll be some additional releases, and you'll see this brought up again throughout the day, and also that is on the awards page. So a huge congratulations to all of our awardees, and again, for the participation of all the nominees. It was a lot of work, especially toward the end as we're fighting for those votes. We've never had so many participants in voting. We had several of our winners get over 100 votes in their respective categories. So again, huge congratulations. And thank you again for participating in that with us. Finally, you will notice on demandgensummit.com again that we do have an offer for the Demand Gen Blueprint. If you've registered for the event, simply click to get the download or to get the PDF document there. It's about a 7-page document, and that'll be emailed to you. If you haven't registered, then we'll ask you for your email so that it can be sent to you. So that's what I have to cover there. Now let's talk a little bit about what we're expecting and some of the speakers, highlights, things that we've seen that we've liked from the pre-recordings, but also for both of us, Steve and I, to see the keynote, get some comments on that. So allow me to make a slight adjustment here. Okay, and Steve, you're live with us. Welcome.
Great, glad to be here.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks again. You know, and kind of talking again, we've got John Miller and Billy Bateman coming up live right on this feed. So wherever you're watching this, you can watch it LinkedIn, YouTube, or again at demandgensummit.com. So they're coming on at, again, let's see here, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. So we'll be about 10 minutes here. But I did want to talk a little bit about the keynote, right? I mean, yeah, super great. Some of it was high level, but a lot of it was in depth too about how the important steps and things to be aware of. So many good things. But one thing that stood out to me, Steve, and maybe we can talk about this and bring up some things that came out to you. But I liked when he said, hey, if you're worried about the position of where you're at, right? You're talking about costs and spending. Maybe you're having to cut 20%. Get ahead of it. Don't wait for the CRO to come back and say, hey, I need you to make that 20% cut. Oh, you haven't done it yet. Guess what? This is what you're losing, right? Get ahead of that. If you're not a part of revenue, find a way that you can help drive revenue. Just because that isn't what you did before, like Mark Mon, I believe, was explaining, his team didn't used to go out and meet with the customers, but now they are. They're meeting with the customers. So finding ways to get ahead of revenue, being more proactive. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think here at Signals, I got to get used to that. At Signals, everybody's part of the revenue team. There are times where our head of development will hop on calls with customers, and they'll hear the feedback. What do we need to add to the product? What is it missing? What do we need to adjust, or help the customer? Sometimes they can sell the product because they know the technicalities of it better than we as salespeople do. So everybody's in on that. I've also been impressed, for example, we did an exercise where we're like, where can we streamline things? Well before this big push and everybody was worried about it. We looked at what could we do? Are there process or tools that are nice to haves, but we can adjust. So part of what they said reminded me of when I was learning to drive. And was told to change lanes, and I was told always take control and to change lanes. Don't get out ahead of the car that you want to merge in with, and rather than adjust and be at the mercy of whatever somebody's going to let you in, own it, and then you won't have problems. I think we need to do the same thing with our revenue stream.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Hey, and I did see we got a little warning there saying battery pack went out. So we can hear you clearly. We can't see you, but that we're
swapping it out right now.
That's fine. But hey, no, that was perfect comment. I mean, it's so true, right? Get ahead of it so that you can have more control of what you're doing. So I love that. Another thing that stood out to me, and this really rings home to me, was again, I think it was Rick Tolman, and probably all three of them mentioned it. But it's data. Know the data. Follow the data. Do your tests. Do small tests, and then do as you're going along with those small tests and findings tests. Then graduate it. Don't just dump into one avenue. And if you're using a couple channels or providers to help out with that, to be able to renegotiate, package, and now is the time to be thinking about that. But coming back to the data aspect, sometimes we hear a lot of, hey, I feel like this is the right maneuver, or I've seen in the past that this works in this other situation. It may work this time. And all this could, would, should, I feel like it could be kind of language probably doesn't exude a lot of confidence when we're talking about cutbacks, or we're needing to consider the economy or all these other financial situations that could come up. So know the data, know where your numbers lie, know where the strengths are, know how to proceed tactfully and with some background and not just gut feelings, right? So that was some of my thoughts and takeaways when they mentioned that.
Yeah, but it's as simple as know your ICP, right? How many times I worked for a company who was sure they knew what their ICP was, and they doubled down on it. They were sure of it. They put everything on black, going for this one ICP. And I was talking to one of our data guys, and John told me, "Hey, listen, our ICP is wrong. That's not who we should be going after. This is what the data says." But we had people in leadership who didn't want to look at the data. They wanted to go with their gut, and they wanted to go with what they wanted to go with. And it really meant the demise of the company ultimately, because they didn't want to look at the data. They want to look at their gut. And I'm not discounting your gut, your intuition, your experience in the role, but you need to balance that out with what does the data tell you to do. And when you can balance those two things, that's when you're going to see success, especially in the choppy waters like we're heading into and are in now.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. That's good examples there. Now let me see. I made a couple other notes here of things that stood out to me. Again, and for those of you just joining us, we do have that keynote presentation. It's available if you're at demandgensummit.com. That's just below this live feed. You'll see that with opening comments. So you can review that, see awards, and then watch the keynote. It's about an hour long. Again, Dave Elkington, Rick Tolman with Salesforce, and Mark Mon with Domo. So take a look at that. And that's what we're talking about now. Upcoming is John Miller, CMO of Demandbase, and Billy Bateman here in the next 10 to 15 minutes. But as we're preparing for that, here, looking at my notes here. So deal flexibility. That was kind of one of those things where I think we're used to in the past. Hey, we're wanting to work this deal. We want to make, here's the deal desk, or I got to get approval for X, Y, and Z, or we don't do 10% deals or 15% or whatever it is. We don't package this or that. Now's the time that they're saying, hey, listen, based on experience, you do now, or you got to consider it or plan on it. What can you do? What can you do to make the deals happen? Obviously within reason. But I thought that was interesting. And I know you being in the sales area, if I don't know how many years, 2 decades now or so, but yeah, what were your thoughts on that when they were talking about that? It wasn't. Yeah.
It reminds. I've got a buddy of mine in real estate, and he's always been more than flexible in his commercial real estate spaces to sell 10% below market and to get people into, and to be creative with the deals, to get people into his commercial spaces, because his thought is, the only thing worse than a discounted space is an empty space. And I think the only thing worse than something not, than discounted, whatever it is you're selling, is stuff sitting on your shelf or software not sold. So the fact is, I think it's a real opportunity for those of us in sales to get creative, to really understand our customers and what are their needs, and how can we craft a deal that makes sense for our customers. And it's really going to show the difference between those who can understand and think, and those who are just robots that just want to go ahead and this is our plan. This is all we sell. This is what we do. We've been given flexibility here, and it's been great. And our customers feel heard. We feel like we're moving deals across the finish line. And it's been a boon for us here. So in Jeb Blount, he just wrote a book called Selling in a Crisis. And one of the things he talks about is when the tide goes out, you find who's wearing a swimsuit. And the tide's going out, and you need to make sure your swimsuit's on, and that you are you're getting creative. And this is where we're going to see who's good at sales, and who can do the job.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, I think we might shift a little bit here. We've talked a bit about the keynote. Again, that is available. It'll be, all these presentations will be available on demand access for the next 30 days there. But we just had another block of speakers released at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So just about 15-20 minutes ago. And there we included several known speakers. If you haven't heard of them before, you're going to listen to them and be like, wow, where have I been? I haven't heard these guys before. But to include that, we have Phil Birch with Sendoso, Will Allred with Lavender, Jonathan Bland from OmniLab, Christina Bottas from Medix, Declan Mulkeen from Strategic ABM, Kate Adams with Validity, William Tyree from Revenue.io, Eric Stockton, Constant Contact, and last but not least, Chris Dutton with 6 Cents. And Chris was one of our award winners in our categories today. So get a chance, take a look at the presentations. They're about 20 to 30 minutes long, just depending on the presentations. But one thing, as I was listening to some of these pre-recorded presentations that have been prepared, and again, great. I mean, I love our speakers. They take the time to share knowledge. And that's something that the keynotes brought up as well. Hey, if you need help, reach out, right? If you're trying to sell something, then don't. But if you need some advice, you're looking for a play, you're looking to run by a strategy, reach out to these professionals, and they bring that up in several times from our speakers in what you'll be listening today. I mean, the speakers we have at this event are people that are not looking to take. They've been given, and early on in their years, they've executed. They've found what's worked. They've found what hasn't. They've seen this economy and the struggles that we're facing today, or we're going to see in 2023, and generously giving that input. So what I was going to say with that, though, is and Steve, you were bringing this up a little bit, was we're using the expertise of our sales. We can't be robotic and say, look, this is the only thing I sell and that's it. We bring this up a lot throughout the event. And I think we'll see this in demand generation as we listen to these speakers and their presentations. But we're using skilled professionals along with the right technology, and that's where you're making the magic work. You're able to cut the cost from not having such an extensive tech stack that has to make up for the lack of skilled workers. And at the same time, you're not overusing or just relying on one person to run one play or a certain department. You have the technology and the skilled professionals to run those and make it work together. You're going to see that topic come up several times. Steve, you're nodding your head. Comment on that.
Yeah, listen, I've heard through the years that, hey, technology is going to go ahead and it's going to make salespeople obsolete. Product-led growth has made salespeople obsolete. I've talked to customers who are marketing leaders who are like, hey, you know what? I'm in the process of getting rid of our entire sales team because our product sells itself. Well, in a good environment, that's quite possible. But it's times like this where you see who's really skilled and who can adjust. It's times like this where I say, you know, I'm glad I'm pretty good at my job because I know I'm not going to get replaced by automation because automation does its set things very well, but it's not creative. That being said, automation can help leverage what I, as a skilled and creative sales professional or marketing professional, can do. And you need to make sure that that's how you're using it to leverage and extend what you can do. But it's, you've got some creative people, use them. So, yeah.
Steve, thank you. That's a great place to end. We are coming up on our next presentation. Again, John Miller, CMO of Demandbase, and Billy Bateman, co-founder of Signals, will be joining us. Steve, thank you. And we'll let you guys, we'll let this go and get prepped for the next couple of minutes for their presentation. So stay with us and we'll talk to you again. Thank you.
All right,
Hello.
John, good to see you. Thanks for joining us here at the Demand Gen Summit.
Totally. Seems like it's been really good so far.
Oh, it's been great. It's been great. We've had Dave, Mark, and Rick. I thought their keynote was really insightful. We've got a bunch of speakers already up that were recorded before the event that everyone can go and view now. But excited to talk to you. Before we get going, just a little intro to John. John is the man, the myth, the legend himself. One of the co-founders at Marketo, started a company named Engagio, and now the CMO at Demandbase. And really excited to see what you have to share with us, John.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let's get into it. Really want to talk about go-to-market strategies, what people can be doing to be successful today in today's environment. So let's just jump into it. Like, what are the struggles that you've seen in today's B2B marketing and sales teams that they're experiencing with their go-to-market strategies?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to answer that starting by, a little bit of just going back in time. I mean, as you just mentioned, I was one of the co-founders at Marketo and sort of helped to build our demand gen engine there. And I think, we talked a lot about our own secret sauce at Marketo and how we did it. And I think that inspired a lot of other companies to sort of, well, it's working for Marketo, let me do it the same way. So as a result, like a lot of those patterns and strategies became kind of commonplace, and it was working at the time, back in like 2010, 2012, when I was doing this at Marketo, the demand gen that we were running was generating like 80% of all the pipeline the sales team was closing. So, and as a result, the sales reps could have higher quotas, and it was really overall a very efficient engine. But as I said, that was like 10 years ago. And I think the way buyers buy has changed a lot since then. And I think that's requiring some pretty deep changes to how we think about doing demand generation. Put another way, the sort of simple world of what we did at Marketo kind of doesn't work that well anymore, at least for most businesses. So I want to talk about some of those changes and some of the challenges that's caused.
Okay.
So Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. So, I think the first challenge is the traditional Marketo demand gen model uses like a baton handoff as sort of the metaphor. Marketing would generate a lead, and then we would nurture it until it's ready and score it and know when it's time to pass it to an SDR or a salesperson. The SDR would qualify and pass it to the AE, who'd close it, who'd pass it to a customer success person. And it was a very linear process where the lines between each of the departments were defined clearly.
Yeah.
The roles and responsibilities and the service level agreements, you could document it all, and it was very, very straightforward. But that worked when buying was somewhat linear and simplistic. And buying today is more complicated. It's much more nonlinear. It's also, as we'll talk more later, much more complex in terms of multiple members of a buying committee coming in and out at different parts of the process. So as a result, that sort of linear baton handoff mindset kind of breaks. The analogy I like to use to describe demand generation today looks more like a football or soccer team, depending on where you live in the world and your sport of choice. But fundamentally, we've got players in different positions, and they pass the ball back and forth as the ball moves up and down the field.
Yeah.
If you look at the path the ball takes, it's a very nonlinear path, towards the goal. And it requires the players in these different positions to really work together in an aligned fashion. So put another way, demand gen today requires a much more orchestrated, complex set of motions between marketing and sales. No longer that sort of simple linear baton handoff.
For sure.
That's the first one.
Okay. What's number two?
So number two has to do with the fact that buyers today are a lot more anonymous and kind of privacy focused, than they used to be. Again, back in the Marketo days, somebody would come to my site, they want my ebook, they fill out a form, boom, I've got my cookie on them now, and I can use Marketo to track everything they're doing on my site. Digital body language, it was called at the time, and we could score them. Buyers today, though, are savvy. They know if they come to the site and fill out that form, we're going to track them. They're probably going to get emails and phone calls they don't want. So they're increasingly trying to stay anonymous on our own site. And they're doing more and more of the research, off of our site. Like whether it's just researching articles, or increasingly talking to people in private dark communities. And that makes it just a lot harder to be smart about where an account is and a person is, and to score them appropriately. And it increases the need for things like intent data. And you layer that on top of that, privacy requirements, cookies going away, and again, it's just the result is that there are sources of intelligence out there, but they're really fragmented. And to make your demand generation work, you got to find some way to bring all that fragmented data together and really, make sense of it, which requires AI and other things that just didn't exist 10 years ago.
Yeah. So how do we start bringing that data together and piecing the picture? How do you guys do it at Marketo? Or not at Marketo, at Demandbase?
Yeah, exactly. Because we didn't do it very well at Marketo, kind of back then. I think the first piece of the puzzle is that, at least for B2B companies, we've got a little bit of superpower that consumer marketers don't have. And that's the fact that there aren't really any privacy regulations or, frankly, privacy concerns about company or account level data.
Yeah.
Where people are squeamish about, me, you're tracking my behaviors, my income and whatever, what it might be. But, the fact that my company has $260 million of revenue and is headquartered in San Francisco, that doesn't really particularly make anybody all that squeamish,
Yeah.
And so we can start thinking about how to use the account level information, both things like I just mentioned, like firmographics, like where are they? How big are they? But also more subtle things like technographics. What technologies does that company have installed already?
Yeah.
Because knowing what tech they own is a pretty good clue about what tech they might be buying next. Also, I mentioned earlier, intent data. Intent data doesn't tell you what John Miller is interested in. It tells you what my company, in aggregate is interested in. So again, it doesn't trigger that kind of privacy, anonymous compliance set of concerns. So that's the first piece. Is just we've got this account level data that we can use that we can use to be a lot smarter about knowing what's happening at that account and what's going to be relevant. And then on top of that, we do have our first party data. The data, and that's the data that's in my marketing automation and in my CRM, in my emails and the calendar meetings that my reps have. And I don't want to say it's perfect, but if you add it all up, the marketing automation data, CRM data, the email data, the website data, the calendar data, and bring it together and augment it with the third-party data I was just talking about the accounts.
Yep.
And run it through AI, now you start to be able to have some intelligence, to be smarter about knowing what's happening at the account, what you should say, what's the right set of plays to run, et cetera.
I like it. So just to kind of recap for anyone who's joined us, because we're streaming live, really look at the data around what's going on with these different accounts at the high level. Like, look at that account data, the firmographic information. Don't get too personal, and then look at your first party data, your CRM, what's going on in the emails, on your website, if we know what's going on with the account, even the individuals, before we decide on, hey, how are we going to engage these accounts?
Yeah. And probably the most important piece there is to try to understand where that account might be in its buying journey with a company like you.
Yep.
Because there's people aren't, let me get this phrase the right way. People don't like getting cold calls from salespeople. They don't like unwanted sales outreach. But if you can find that right magic moment when they actually are kind of thinking about making a purchase, and you can reach out in a way that is not pushing salesy, but actually helps them to think about structuring a complex evaluation, that actually can be perceived as very valuable.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's kind of like the challenger sale method you're talking about. If you know the right time that you can say, hey, let us be your guide and help you in making this decision. Not, hey, you were on our pricing page, let's get you signed up today.
Yeah. But the reality is buying these B2B products is hard. And as much as vendors like me, we try to make it clear what we do, but every vendor suffers from the curse of knowledge, right? We know so much more about our world than the buyer does. It's almost impossible to make it simple enough for the buyer. So the buyers are overwhelmed because it's complex, it's hard. Do I even need to buy this thing? I can't tell the vendors apart from each other. And if a salesperson can show up in a challenger appropriate way and say, I'm going to help you make sense of all this, and they show up at the right time, that's actually pretty useful. And so knowing where that account is in its journey, it becomes so important.
So how do you figure out what
that right time? Right?
How do you know when they're there though, John? Like that's really, because we can see hey, like a lot of us, you've got the reverse IP, at least at the account level, you can be like, you know what, these 30 accounts have been hitting my site pretty regular. They kind of match my, the ICP that we typically sell to. But what signs and signals do you look for to say, hey, this is the time for, not just to send them like a marketing email, like all about us and how great we are, and maybe you want to get on our mailing list, but have a salesperson say, hey, let's do some outreach and pick up the phone and give our buying committee at these accounts a call.
Yep. This is where AI becomes so valuable, because the reality is there's you can't ever point to just that one magic thing.
Yeah.
Again, back to the simple world of Marketo. You can score a lead, give them points, and hey, if they get to 100 points, they're an MQL, let's go call them. It's just, that's not the way it works today. So, a lot of companies have gotten excited about intent data, because intent sort of purports to solve this and say, hey, we can tell you when there's a spike or a surge or a trend in they're researching your topics a lot more. And, that sounds pretty cool. The problem though, in demand-based, we sell intent data, right? We are intent data providers. Yeah. Obviously I don't want to poo-poo intent data, but it's really valuable, but it's insufficient by itself.
Yeah.
Right. It's one signal of what might be going on at the account. The stuff they're doing on your site is another signal, right? If you, if typically you've had one or two people on the site reading your blog, but now all of a sudden you see 12 people show up and they're reading your product pages, okay, that's an interesting signal, right? Again, by itself, it might not be sufficient, but if you combine that with the intent data, now you're starting to get to see some sort of a pattern here. And that's exactly what AI is really good at. So what the AI can do is it can look at what are the patterns that accounts tend to follow in the 30 days before they become an opportunity. And if you can see an account that starts showing a similar pattern, that's where it starts to get interesting. Now, I will say, when you start talking about AI, you get into like black boxes and like some magic voodoo thing that's going to somehow like, wave your hands and like this account will float up above and like that's the account that you should, and nobody knows why that account is the one that sort of lit up.
Yeah.
So I do think you need to be careful of like making it feel like it's voodoo magic black box. At the end of the day, if you're going to tell a salesperson, hey, this account seems hot, you got to be able to tell them why.
Yeah. I agree with you, because we'll do this even out of our product. We do a little bit of it, and it's more focused on, hey, what's going on your website? And we start out just sending alerts like, hey, they're trending, get after them. And even my own sales team is like, okay, why are they trending, Billy? And we had to give them more insight. Okay, like here are some of the activities that make us think you should be going after them.
That's exactly right. Well, we're in a live show, but I think I may have just
it looks like my camera is out, but you can still hear me. So let's just keep rolling. We're getting the camera fixed. We're getting the camera fixed. Okay. So
and you're back.
There we're good. We're good. So you wrote a book. If people haven't read your book, Unspam Your Brand, it's ebook. Pretty sure you can just get it for free off the demand-based website. But one of the things I really liked when I read it, and I agree with you, but I just wanted to get a little more insight from you for anyone who hasn't read this. You talk about we need to change from we're selling to a lead, and we've already touched on this a little bit, to you're actually selling to a whole account. And in today's environment, you're definitely selling to multiple decision makers. Like nothing is getting approved right now, at least if you're selling into tech, without a couple people getting their hands into the deal to make sure like we need to spend this money. So how do we adapt and change as marketing and salespeople to make sure that we're addressing the entire account when we get them into that selling process?
Yeah, we're talking about ABM, near and dear to my heart, right? So I should say the full title of the book is Unspam Your Brand, which is like the catchy headline, but it's the definitive guide to a smarter go-to-market through ABM and ABX. If anybody's read any of my definitive guides from Marketo, you know that these aren't your simple ebooks. This is 260 pages, and it's chock full of lots of ideas and best practices. The thesis behind the book, though, is that being the recipient of sales and marketing today often feels pretty crappy. And we've talked a little bit about this. Unwanted emails and phone calls and irrelevant messages and ads that don't make sense and all that. And the question I ask in the book is, why is this happening? It's not like the salespeople are dumb. They're not, right? You can't be dumb and survive in sales today. And it's not like the marketers are dumb or ill-intentioned. We all want to be relevant with our customers, but we fail so often. And we fail so often because we don't have all the intelligence that we need. So the book then really goes into a lot of like, all right, what is the answers to that? And one of the key reasons why we're failing today, to be more relevant and personalized, is because too much of the marketing historically has been focused on the lead and not the account and the buying group. To your kind of specific question, and we see this all the time, in the real world. One, hey, somebody comes to your website, they fill out a form to get your ebook or something. That doesn't mean that company is in a buying cycle.
Yep.
Even if one person comes to your site and fills out like a contact me, right? What you have is you have one like glimpse into one sort of fraction of what's happening in the account. I like to sort of talk about, there's this old fable of 5 blind men who are touching an elephant. I don't know if you've heard this fable, but the first blind man is touching the tail and thinks it's a snake. And the second blind man is touching the leg and thinks it's a tree. The third one is touching the horn or the tusk, and I forget what he thinks it is, but something hard. Fourth one's touching the ear, thinks it's a carpet, and so on. And that can happen all the time when, if you get just that one lead, right? It's like you're only touching the tail or the leg. You don't really know what the whole thing is. When you can look at it from an account level and you can aggregate this information of what's happening with the lead and, this one and this one and this one and this one, that's when you start to really get a sense of like, okay, I can really now start to figure out that this thing's an elephant.
Yeah.
And, or this account or this buying group, is there something really going on or not? And, it just makes sense too. I mean, at the end of the day, a salesperson doesn't close a lead, they close an account. And so it makes sense that everything about our go-to-market should be focused around that buying group or that account, not the individual person.
Yeah, I agree on that. We got to figure out how to address the whole account. So when you're looking at the account journey, what are some of the tactics and strategies we actually need to be thinking about? Like when we're just like, okay, you've got this whole journey from awareness to qualified to an opportunity to making a decision to even becoming a customer and renewal.
Yep.
And as we engage these, like, what do we need to be addressing in these different steps in the journey?
No, I'm glad you're asking about that. Because I only sort of loosely touched on that earlier. The knowing where the account is in the journey is probably the single most important attribute you have to be more relevant and more personalized with that account.
Yeah.
And we talked about like, well, hey, if they're actually in a buying cycle, you're going to want to treat them this way. But let's just say this is an account that's at the very top of the journey. What you call the qualified stage, or what I call also qualified stage. This is an account that you're interested in. They seem like they're a good fit for you, but they're otherwise pretty darn cold, right? They're not they're not really engaging on your site, and they're not even showing a lot of intent, right? So how are you going to treat that account? Right. The worst thing to do is to start having an SDR send blind emails, because then that literally the people at that account will hit spam, if that happens.
Yeah.
No matter how good or personalized that relevant is. And you mentioned that you went to the same college they did. And like, boy, the Badgers weekend doesn't matter. If they're in that very top of this, stage and they're not thinking about your business, it's going to be spam at that stage.
For sure.
So there, you got to be thinking about, all right, I need to build my brand. I need to build some awareness, and honestly, this is about emotion and not logic, and so literally, what is your branding campaign? I know this is the Demand Gen Summit, but people don't talk nearly enough about the impact that your brand has on your demand. And so thinking about building your brand with these accounts before they're sort of entering into the account journey is really, really critical. Then you have accounts that start to move down that journey. So I should also say, back to like, don't have a black box. I don't think you should ever have a vendor sort of force you into a set of stages for your journey. Like, you shouldn't adjust your business to match a vendor's set of conditions. The software should adjust to your business. So as I'm talking about these stages, I'm really describing stages that, hey, work for me at Demandbase, but your business might be different. You can and should customize the definitions of some of these stages as you go. But that sort of caveat aside, about you wanting transparency, for me, after the qualified stage, I would have what I call an aware stage. So this is an account that is in my ideal customer profile and is starting to show some intent, though they're still not really engaging with my site. The stage after that one, I would call engaged. And an engaged one is now, okay, they're somebody I'm interested in, and I've got at least a decent number of people from that account who are like starting to interact with me, whether it's my content, my blogs, my events, and things like that.
Yeah.
They're still not showing any of those signals of being in market or buying, though. So I think you take these aware and these engaged accounts, and this is where you sort of want to move from the emotion and brand to the sort of thought leadership and logic. This is where your content can really come into play. Your ebooks, your webinars, your podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully mostly not gated. Because at the end of the day, you don't really care if somebody in this stage is filling out a form or not.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to necessarily call them. You're just trying to kind of educate and move them through this process. Then you might have what I call a marketing qualified account, or MQA.
Okay.
Call it whatever you want. But obviously the MQA is a play on the classic MQL. This is that magic in market. They're showing the signs and the behaviors that accounts tend to show 30 days before an opportunity. This is where you kind of definitely want to sort of be a little bit more focused and aggressive in that challenge or consultative outreach, et cetera.
Yep.
From there, you can think about whether you want to break your open opportunities into just one stage or multiple stages. I do see a lot of times there's a dead zone in the opportunity journey, which is you've created the op, but it's not kind of actively buying right now, buying cycle. And ops often kind of sit dead there for a while. Either they go non-responsive or something. So you're going to want to think about accounts maybe in that stage differently from accounts that are kind of in active. Sales rep is meeting with them every week. There's a defined buying day, conditions to close, et cetera. Now you might say, hey, we should have created that op in the first place, but there's lots of reasons why people create ops. And so kind of that aside, the point is you can have these different stages. For the opportunities where I think you want to focus your marketing is on validation and consensus, right? We've talked about the fact that these buying committees have up to 21 different people. And I can pretty much guarantee you that sales rep is not talking to 21 different people. There are going to be people at the account that are influencing your deal that are not as part of the sales rep's radar. But marketing is good at kind of air cover and breadth. And focusing your marketing on things that drive validation and consensus around the decision, like analyst reports, third-party validation, case studies, all these types of things become really valuable. But you'll notice marketing isn't stopping, even though it's an opportunity. You're just changing kind of the focus of what you're trying to do. And then lastly, they can do a bunch of things even once they're a customer. Around adoption and value, net promoter, and ultimately expansion if you've got more products to sell, which is about really, and that expansion at the end of the day is really about understanding buying committees and pockets of engagement inside the larger account. So the point is, the journey should be customizable, and it should give you clues around how to speak to that account in the most relevant, impactful way for where they are in their journey.
Okay. I like it. One thing, listening to the keynote this morning at that opportunity stage, that's where Dave and Rick and Mark spent a lot of their time focused on. And one of the insights, I forget exactly who shared it, but they talked about, their top of funnel opportunities, early stage opportunities, they've never had more. But where the challenge they're seeing is moving them down the bottom of the funnel right now. There's a lot of hesitancy to actually progress and get close and sign that deal ultimately. So what do you guys, my question is, what do you do at demand base tactics once they're in that, hey, we're in this opportunity stage? What are we doing display ads to the whole account? Are we getting those buying committee people, even though we may not be having conversations with them, with, chances are sales is only talking to 2 to 5 people, as they're moving this around. But there could be that other, if we're talking to 5 people, we've got 16 more people that might be involved in making that decision. So how does demand base run air cover for sales in that opportunity stage?
I mean, a couple different tactics that we use. You did mention display advertising and advertising, and that's definitely true as part of it.
Yep.
And again, where the ads are, hey, look, we're a leader in the latest Gartner Magic Quadrant report. You should feel good about this, study. Or hey,
Yep.
Forrester did a total economic impact review and showed that you're going to get 273% ROI, right? So you can definitely kind of do some of that kind of stuff, and that's very, very,
I like it,
useful. But I think there's a lot more you can do. We have an automated set of reporting that lights up any open opportunity that hasn't had a sales touch in the last week.
Okay.
So, we're connected to the CRM, so we know what the opportunities are. We're connected to the emails, so we know if our sales rep is emailing, or if they're if people at that account are emailing us. We know if there's meetings, right? So we can light up any account that might be stalling for any set of reasons. And that can go to the individual rep. It can also go to the reps managers saying, hey, here are your reps accounts that are at risk of kind of stalling. So that's just another example of just, making sure things move. Now, let's say something is stalling. Then you get into, well, what should we do? We do something that we call account stand-ups, where a rep and the marketer and an SDR get together on a periodic basis and talk about what's going on at that rep's accounts. And it can be open ops, and it can be not, kind of ops we're trying to create.
Yeah.
And so if we see, and usually what we do is we have a dashboard in demand base that kind of walks through the different views of that rep's territory that might make sense. One of the things on that dashboard might be this stalled opportunity view that we just talked about. And at that point, they can nominate a set of different plays that we might want to run. So sometimes that might be an exec engagement. So they might ask me to reach out to the CMO, to kind of get that kind of level, or our CEO to reach out to their CEO, or our CFO to reach out to their CFO. Those types of plays that we can run. At times we'll do like a direct mail play, whether that's, directly to a person or a decision maker. Just to kind of, sometimes there'll be a signed copy in my book. Other times it can be something fun. People were in offices, which we don't really do this much anymore. But the classic, send a whole box of cupcakes to the office, with your logo on the top of each cupcake or something. So there's similar things you can do. But ultimately, what I'm trying to convey here is we have a playbook of things you can do, and it's that stand-up or a huddle that the rep sort of calls the play they want to run to kind of progress the deal.
I like it.
With the playbook.
I like it. Thank you. Thanks for sharing these. And if you're listening and you're watching this, man, John has just shared a bunch of great insights as you're trying to move these deals down the funnel and support with marketing. Because I think sometimes for marketers, it's easy to forget what you're ultimately going to be judged off is did you drive more revenue? It's not the impressions, it's not the clicks, it's not the website visitors, or even the conversion rate. It's did we hit the number? Is what your CEO, your COO is going to judge you off of. So these are all things to help with that. Okay, we've got a few more things we want to hit before we wrap up. So how do you, we talked about a bunch of strategies, and we've gotten into this a little bit on the opportunity level, but break down where you think companies should start if they haven't been thinking about selling to accounts and they've been very lead focused, and they're going to make this change to okay, we're focused on the account journey. where do they start? Like, what are the 2 or 3 things that they should really start thinking about as they get started and implement?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to answer this 2 different ways. I'm going to first answer the recommendation I have where I would love to see companies start, because it's the right answer. And then I recognize that not every company is going to be able to kind of do it exactly best practice right off the top. So then I'll give more of a crawl, walk, run kind of answer.
Okay.
But the best way to do this, I mean, so at the end of the day, any account-based program, what it's really about more than anything else is putting more resource into more valuable accounts, and by definition, less resource into less valuable accounts, right?
Yep.
So instead of kind of everybody being treated the same, you're really just differentiating value. And so the simplest thing you do is you have target accounts and non-target accounts, right? A more sophisticated thing would be you might have tier 1 accounts, tier 2 accounts, tier 3 accounts, and then non-target accounts. So you can kind of think about this. But the magic in all of this is getting the right accounts into the right tiers. Now, that's often a mistake would be to have the marketers select the accounts. And this happens a lot because the marketers are the ones who have access to lots of cool data, right? Usually if there's an ABM platform like Demandbase, the marketers probably bought it, and so they might say, well, hey, the Demandbase stuff spits out, these are the best accounts, so these should be the best, these accounts that we're going to do. It's way better to have marketing help guide the process, with like, hey, sales, here's the data that says which the best accounts are. But now you, Mr. or Mrs. Salesperson, you pick, because then the salesperson really has buy-in and alignment, because they've actually chosen the accounts as opposed to being sort of told which are the accounts.
Yeah.
Now, to make that selection work well, what I recommend you do is actually write down on a Google document or some shared document, what does it mean to be a target account? Or even better, what does it mean to be a tier 1 and a tier 2 and a tier 3? And I call this your entitlements. What is the entitlements for a tier 1 account? What is marketing going to do? What is sales going to do? And there's 2 pieces of magic behind defining these entitlements. The first piece is it's your contract. When the salesperson goes to pick their tier 1 accounts, they know exactly what it means to be picking a tier 1 account because it's documented and defined. And so few people actually define it. The other magic of defining your entitlements is it tells you how many of each account you can really support. Put another way, the mistake companies run into is they're just like, well, every rep needs to get a tier 1 account or, gets 10 tier 1 accounts. So we're going to have 200 tier 1 accounts. And, usually that ends up meaning you're not really treating your tier 1s as differentiated as you want to.
Yeah.
But by defining the entitlements, it'll be like, okay, I could really only have 20 of these for my whole company. So how am I going to make sure I get the right 20? As a sidebar, you just got to remember, the Pareto rule, 80-20. This is true in account selection. Your top 20% of your accounts are probably worth 80% of the value. And within that bucket, the top 20% of that 20%, i.e. your top 4%, is probably 80% of that, of the value. Yeah. So getting really differentiated really does make sense. So letting all that down, best practice is you want a marketing driven but sales owned account selection process, which uses entitlements to define what it means to be each of the types of tiers, and then tells you how many of each one you can have, and then Marketing brings the data, and then sales actually does the selections. So, in a perfect world, that's the best place to start. Now, not everybody can do that.
Yep.
So there are lots of sort of baby. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. There are a lot of baby steps that you can take as you're thinking about getting something like that in place. I have to cough one more time.
No worries. It happens when we're live.
So we've mentioned advertising a couple of times, but advertising is your simplest, easiest baby step because you're already spending money in your demand gen programs, and maybe what you do is you just take some of your lowest performing dollars and say, you know what, I'm going to just test out if I take $5,000 a month off my crappy programs and use it to run ads to this list of accounts that I think look like a good list of accounts. And then I can see, well, do I get more web traffic from those accounts after I ran the ads than before? And frankly, this doesn't require you having any new process, any new people, any new budget, and it's eminently measurable. Did I get more traffic before or then after? And if so, at least it's a clue that something's working. So that's a really easy on-ramp, to get started. I'll leave it at that. If you in my book talks about more kind of easy on-ramps. We probably should get to some other questions too.
And if anyone hasn't read the book, like I haven't read the whole thing cover to cover because, like you said, it's not like your typical 30-40 page ebook, but tons of good stuff in there. I've had my marketing team go through it and they love it as well. So one more thing, we're running out of time here, but you've talked about there's a shift in the engagement and demand generation, and you mentioned 5 different go-to-market processes. One being account intelligence. Where do we start? Like, let's just wrap up with what you recommend doing with these different GTM processes.
Yeah. So the 5 processes in the book are, what I call build, which is build your account intelligence foundation. Yep. Then find the right target accounts. And that's frankly what I just talked about. Defining your tiers and your entitlements and having a smart account selection process. The third is then engage. And frankly, this is where the demand gen people kind of light up, right? Because the first 2 are kind of like more marketing operations and process and all that. Engage is we're going to run some programs, right? We're gonna
do something.
We're going to do some display ads, but we're also going to send some emails and hold some events, send some direct mail, do some website chat, personalize some web pages. So there's all these different channels that you can use to engage your target accounts defined by your entitlements. The magic in the engage process is it's less about the any one channel of the Holy Grail. It's more about the orchestration across the channels. Yeah. And I use the word orchestration very consciously there, because you can think about it. You've got your direct mail, that's your percussion. You have your events, that's your brass. You've got your email, that's your string instruments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What you want is them to all work in harmony. And that's why the word orchestration kind of, I think, makes so much sense. So we covered build, find, engage. The 4th process is close. And this is really at the core of that sales and marketing alignment. Getting, if you think of sales as a channel, orchestrating sales into the overall mix.
Yeah.
And, we've already talked about aligned sales and marketing account selection process, where sales really owns the account selection. We've talked about sales and marketing looking more like a team rather than a baton handoff.
Yeah.
And we talked about things like stand-up. So there's like lots of just nuances of getting sales and marketing to work together in a very effective way. And then the fifth process is measurement, or measure, which is near and dear to the hearts of all demand gen marketers. We love our metrics, measurements. And there's a couple key things I sort of would talk about when we talk about measurement in this world. The first is to make sure you're focusing on quality metrics and not just quantity metrics. The classic demand gen metrics are about counting things. I had this many attendees. I had, this many MQLs and so on. And those are still useful, but just a quality metric is, okay, how many of those attendees were the right personas from the target accounts? Just adding the extra kind of quality layer on top of things. How many MQLs from your target accounts?
Yeah.
Or, other kinds of quality-based metrics, start bringing the account lens into it. How many MQAs, not just MQLs, that kind of stuff. So quality, not just quantity.
Okay.
And then the last thing I'll say about measurement is, we could talk for the next hour about attribution. And I know attribution is just something that marketers are always kind of interested in hearing about. I personally think that attribution is pretty flawed in terms of how we're thinking about it for two reasons. The first is part of attribution tends to be trying to assign credit to different teams, right? The whole idea of this is a marketing sourced deal versus a sales sourced deal. And I think we got to throw away those concepts of marketing sourced, marketing influenced, sales sourced, et cetera, because it's not a baton relay anymore. It's a team. And what we care about is does the team score enough goals?
Yeah.
So, number one, first piece is just focus on your total pipeline created and stop worrying about marketing sourced, marketing influenced. That's kind of the key piece on that one. And then the other problem with attribution is that, there's too many people are trying to use attribution to prove their ROI. They want to go in and say, hey, look, I ran this event. It cost me $30,000 and I got this much pipeline and revenue. So look, it was 114% ROI.
Yeah.
There's just too much false precision in that. There are so many assumptions that are built into attribution models, both from how you actually do the allocation to what actually gets included in the attribution model. First, which touches, et cetera, that you're doing yourself a disservice to try to say it's that's a little distracting on the camera. You're doing yourself a disservice to try to say that it's a certain specific ROI. So the best way to think about attribution is don't use it to prove your ROI, use it to improve your ROI. And what I mean by that is it's all relative. You're not saying this got 114% ROI.
Yeah.
What you're saying is this got more ROI than that. And therefore, I should do more of this than that. Use it for direct guidance, not specific proof.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I meet with our marketing team, go through metrics, and everybody's trying to take credit for their campaigns and what they're doing when I really, as a leader, couldn't give a crap. All I care about is, hey, did we hit the company number? Are we meeting our goals? And let's figure out what seems to be working and put more money, more time, more effort, whatever it is, into those things. And then, if it's not working as effectively, let's not do these things if we've got things that are more effective. So I like that way of thinking about it. John, thank you again for joining us. Really insightful. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything you'd leave us with before we go on to our next speaker?
Oh gosh. Well, you already gave a good shout out for the book. So, I mean, I do think, it is free, even though it's a real book. So I do encourage people to grab a copy of that. Yeah, I'll just end with like, gosh, we haven't talked about the fact that we're entering a year where I think marketers are facing a lot of pressure on budgets.
Yeah.
And we're going to hear a lot of the phrase "do more with less." We probably heard a lot today on the summit, but we're going to keep hearing it over and over. So here's what my takeaway on that is: we're going to have to do more with less. I already know how hard people are working, so we're not going to get there by working harder. We're going to have to get there by working smarter. Which means being more relevant, more personalized. So I encourage everybody here to like think about what is your strategy to use intelligence to work smarter in 2023.
I like it. Awesome. Thank you, John. And thanks for joining us on the Demand Gen Summit. Next, in just a few minutes, you're going to hear from Sangram, former co-founder at Terminus. He was at Pardot, and now a partner with GTM Partners.
Big thank you to Billy Bateman, again, co-founder of Signals, and John Miller, CMO of Demandbase, for a great presentation. Typing out my notes here. Again, there's so much to cover. I think we had about 45, 50 minutes of just great content and insights. Again, to check out John Miller's book, Unspam Your Brand. It can be found at demandbase.com. This presentation, along with the others that we'll have today, will be posted after the event. And available with on-demand access. So look forward to seeing that as well. So up next at the bottom of the hour, I'll make sure I have my time frame here right, is 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be hearing from Sangram and Billy to go over to our next presentation. So as we're going there, if you're just now joining us, we're streaming this live on LinkedIn, YouTube, also on the event site, demandgensummit.com. There you can see the speakers' presentations that have been submitted from, again, our wonderful speakers that we've had. Just fantastic, really good presentations. You'll see our keynote, and our recent block was also released. So you'll see that next release come up here shortly. And then as you go, you'll also find our offer that's out there is a blueprint of demand generation. Please check that out as well. So as we're coming up again, we'll have probably a 5-minute break before we get into our next session. Thank you so much for attending. And again, we're on LinkedIn, YouTube, and demandgensummit.com. There you can find the agenda, awardees, nominees from the 4 categories that we recognized from our awards, and then the rest of the speakers and of the event.
All right, everybody. Looks like we're live. Sangram, thanks for joining us.
Anytime, Billy. Get excited to be with you. Let's get this going.
Yeah, let's get it going. So first, if you don't know about Sangram, you're probably, living in a cave or you got your head buried in the sand a little bit. He's everywhere. He's done a lot of things in his career. He ran marketing at Pardot. He was a co-founder at Terminus. He's a best-selling author, podcast host. I mean, he's everywhere. So you can't escape the guy, but he's got great knowledge to share with us. And really excited. Anything I left out on your list of accomplishments? I'm sure there is.
Well, there's definitely two big ones. One, like married for 17 years and got 2 kids,
Awesome.
12 and 8. So I feel like that probably trumps everything else.
I agree. That's awesome. Okay. So we're going to talk about how do you adjust your go-to-market in today's environment. I know we talked a lot about that in other sessions so far today. Dave Elkington and Mark Mon and Rick Tolman of Salesforce talked about it. If you haven't watched that, I encourage anybody go back, watch it. It's about an hour. They've got a lot of great insights that the 3 of them shared. But want to get Sangram's insight on this. I know you've got some opinions. We talked a little bit yesterday and getting ready for this. And so what do you think people should be doing to adjust? Because what worked 12 months ago, even 6 months ago, probably is not working as well as it used to for you.
No, as a matter of fact, right before this call, I was in a call with a CMO of over 100 million in revenue company. And by far, she said our pipeline was the best pipeline we had in many quarters. And our conversion to win has been the least that has ever been. So This is a problem that every company of every size is facing, and it just becomes bigger the bigger that your organization is. So everybody hang in there. I mean, it's a matter of time on that for sure. But Billy, as you and I were chatting about it, what I have noticed that in the whole go-to-market space since I wrote the book Move, which is on go-to-market in 2019, that there were 2 big and mega shifts that are happening in the space. Okay. And I think people need to really distill that down in order to see, well, what's the undercurrent of everything that's happening? Number one, the reality of it is that the metrics truly have changed. Meaning if everybody for last decade or 2 decades, you and I, Billy, we probably have been focused on pipeline and revenue. Those are the most important metrics, and clearly they are important. But they are still at a high level. The deeper metrics for companies to be successful, especially SaaS, if that's your business, it is your NRR and GRR. As a matter of fact, Yamini Rangan, who is the CEO of HubSpot, when I was interviewing her on that in the Peak community, which is for marketers, she said the number 1 metrics that she looks at success for her entire organization. That, remember, it's a public company, is NRR. That's it, NRR. If NRR is over 100%, it changes the equation for the organization, and we'll walk into an example of that.
So before we go any further, though, we got mostly marketing and salespeople. I'm sure a lot of them are familiar with what GRR and NRR are, but do you mind just giving the definition? So if anyone's like, what are they talking about?
Yeah. I'm sure somebody's Googling it and I don't know what you get out there. So let's just talk about the 3 main metrics. Like most people are probably familiar with ARR, which is annual recurring revenue. You're just selling contracts at an annual rate, and that's pretty simple. GRR is your gross retention revenue, which means that how much of your customers are you retaining? And that has been one of the greatest challenges when you hear about the leaky bucket problem. But that's what it is. You're getting 100 customers and losing 70 of them, and that's a problem for a lot of companies even today. And that's something you can start looking at as soon as you have a customer for a year or longer. GRR is the key metric. And NRR is a really important one. Most companies didn't really track this as much, because NRR is net revenue retention, which means with the existing customers you have, how much can you further expand in that company? So think about it like you may have one product. Let's say it's a chat product, and from that you're adding additional products to buy them, and therefore now the value of that one customer is a lot more. That's why the NRR numbers are 100% or greater. If it is lower than 100%, that means you have had no expansion opportunity, which means they're just buying what it is and renewing, and that's it. And that's not a healthy metric. And I'll give you a really interesting stat. I was looking at Jason Lumpkin, who wrote a few things on it. And he's like, well, if your NRR, just mathematically, if your NRR is 120%, you can literally keep going and keep growing as an organization without adding a single new customer for next 5 years. Now, think about that for a second. That's not a conversation anybody is having. But if you're having difficulty converting customers, you should even more look at NRR, because think about it again. If your NRR is 120%, which means you're selling more to the existing customers who already trust you, value you, you understand their business, and you should be able to be more successful with them. If you actually just focus on your existing customers and change that to from 100% to 120% or even better, for the next 5 years, you will still be growing without even adding a single new customer. I think that should just make everybody just explode if they don't know this concept.
Yeah. I mean, so when I did my MBA, like I heard this over and over again in different classes. It's always cheaper to retain and to grow a customer than to go out and acquire a new one. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And just an example from here at Signals, you know, earlier this year, we saw, you know, hey, things are starting to slow down, and we decided, okay, we're going to really focus on our current accounts and how do we grow them, and is there more services, product we can offer to expand their usage with us and retain them. And then last quarter, we hit our number, and sales did a good job, but they missed their number big. But my CS team was able to grow accounts by really focusing it, and we still hit our goal.
Wow.
So,
that is so good, right? Like it almost
Yeah.
takes pressure off you as a leader and as an organization on trying to be this coin-operated revenue machine or like new sales machine to an actual revenue-generating company.
Yeah. You know, I think if you can grow your accounts and figure out how to do that, like you've got a healthy business, because that means your customers love you. If they're not spending more money with you, they're either indifferent or just kind of, or they don't even like you and they're just stuck in a contract and they're just like, yeah, you know, we're in this thing for 3 more months, 18 more months, whatever it is, and then we're getting out.
Yeah. So that's one big mega shift that I think everybody has to wrap their brain around. And thank you for letting me expand on that. The other big shift, Billy, that you and I talked about was this is again, very new in the last 2 decades. Most of the people who have been in marketing, we're all used to inbound and content and marketing automation. Some of us are probably also familiar with ABM in the last 7 years and working on it. But that's it, like inbound, outbound. Like those were the 2 motions that most of us have been around. Now, guess what? There is a PLG movement that is upon us. There is also community-led growth. And this is a great example of what you're doing with building community. There is ecosystem-led growth that, again, you cannot put in the existing frameworks and funnels, because those funnels were made for acquisition, and community and ecosystem are engagement conversations. So it's really hard to put all those things in the existing funnel. So now all of a sudden, every marketer is either going to be asked now or in the next 12 months, hey, what is our go-to-market motion beyond inbound and outbound? And you better have an answer for that question and answer saying, here's why we shouldn't do PLG, or here's why we absolutely should do PLG. And that is something people have to learn now on the job almost. Yeah,
I agree. You got to be looking at more than one way to solve this problem. So let's go through and you've done a lot of great content, and like anyone, if you don't follow Sangram on LinkedIn, go follow him, connect. He posts great content. But one of the things you shared earlier, I think it was just a month or so ago, was the different types of go-to-market motions.
Yeah.
Do you mind giving everybody like, hey, here's, we've got PLG, inbound, outbound, but let's just go down the list for anyone that's like, what else is out there? What options do I have?
Well, there's a lot of it. I'm going to just pull it up as we're speaking so I can give you the exact definitions of it. So, and this is my yesterday's post too. So you can, people, if they're following, you could just download it from yesterday. So I listed down 6 go-to-market motions. One, inbound, most people get it, right? It's content driving conversion. So no need to expand on that. ABM is almost the outbound is ABM. So ABM led, very focused on strategic accounts and targeted accounts. Product led. Now this is really interesting because product led doesn't necessarily only means, oh, we build a product and people are going to buy. Like a lot of people think like that's what product led means, and it's a very limited view of product led growth. I advise everybody to really take a moment and think deeper on it. Product led growth is actually much bigger than that. It means that you can add product led growth even in your expansion motion by creating different models for existing customers to buy your other products at a different way, as opposed to sales process involved in it.
Yeah.
So there's PLG, I think, is much bigger than what people are making it to be. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of research that as go-to-market partners, we're an analyst firm. So we're starting to write about it. And I'm discovering that most people have a very narrow mind around what PLG is. And they think that, oh, you build a product and people will buy. No, that's not how it works. You need to have a go-to-market motion to get your product-led growth to actually become a growth engine. The other one is channel, which is really the idea of distributed signals all over the place, where you're enabling resellers, agency, all of that things start becoming really interesting. A lot of companies, actually, Billy, you probably know as well, have built great businesses on the backs of great channels.
Yeah.
Ecosystem is the new one that I think most people are not thinking about enough. Everybody's trying to be, oh, I'm the best, I'm the greatest at this product, and here's how we sell it. But in reality, the best companies have great ecosystem. You think about Bombora is a great example of it. It's a data provider, and a lot of ABM companies use that as a pipe for driving business, and they make money on every single time somebody uses data. You think about Salesforce is, again, another great example where they have a whole app exchange and a whole ecosystem is selling. Like I was at Dreamforce this year, majority of the people were part of the ecosystem using it. And then the last one is category led, which I think a lot of CEOs feel the pressure to build a category. Having been there myself, I will say, don't do it. Don't do it. This is the last possible option. Don't take the blue pill. It is not something you should go after unless you are ready to devote the next decade of your life to that singular point of view.
Yeah, I agree with you on creating the category. It's not easy. I worked at Inside Sales before they were on their tear, and we were trying to create a category with Dave as the CEO, and it's a lot of work. But I'll tell you this: what fueled a lot of that growth that they ultimately had there was the app exchange for Inside Sales. Like on our marketing team, we were sending people, like, I'm running paid search campaigns that don't go back to our website, don't go to a landing page. They go to App Exchange to sign up and get the app and just install the free trial in Salesforce. And I don't know what the percentage was anymore, but it was a large percentage of our new leads and new business was just like App Exchange. And whether it was running ads or people just finding us because it was popular and we were always in the top 10, huge way. Ecosystem, if you can get it, find a good way in, that's a great way to grow your business.
And I think the challenge most marketers, everybody listening right now, they were like, okay, it's great. Okay, now I have to think about more than one go-to-market motion, inbound, outbound. If that wasn't difficult already with the conversion issue, now adding PLG and community and category and product and channel and ecosystem. The reality is this: based on our research, as building companies, but now even more as an analyst, from what we're seeing, Billy, is every single company needs to have more than one go-to-market motion in play.
Yeah.
If they don't, that's when they get in trouble.
Yeah, you can't have all your eggs in one basket anymore. So you've listed off a few different motions. What do you think are the best ones to mix and match? Like that play nice with each other? Because some of them are very different, and it's like, okay, if I do this, if I've got an inbound motion, I got to have a team that supports that. And then I might need a whole separate team for a channel motion or an ecosystem motion. Like, what do you think are the best ones to pair together? If you're already doing this, like, it would probably make sense to try this one.
Yeah, I think a good pair that we have seen so far, and I'll give you examples because we were talking to Snowflake and Atlassian and people who are doing it, mega, like all of a sudden skyrocketed on PLG, one skyrocketed on ABM. And what we're seeing is most companies, if you are a let's just take specific examples. Think about Calendly as an example, right? If you're in a very pure play PLG mode where your product is great and you have created great market category out there, that's when it works really good. A product-led growth works really well when your category is very well established and you're a leader in that category and you have created that movement where everybody's talking about you and you don't have to do piecemeal a million things. You go to sleep, you see 100 people sign up for it next morning because your category is real and you have built that category. So that works really well together. Another one, you think about Snowflake, great example, where they were initially did not have a PLG mode at all. What they had was a very much ABM play. As a matter of fact, they were very early customers of Terminus. So I remember meeting their executive team and the demand team, and they literally created landing pages for every single target account that they were going after, every single one of them. And they literally had 3 interns, Billy, to build those things. Like, oh, what's the benefit of interns? They don't go to meetings. So hire interns because they get work done. So they literally hired interns to get and just create landing pages for every one of these companies. And then they would create videos and get those companies engaged. And 100% of those companies engaged, either say yay or nay, but they will engage because it was a page created for them. And they were selling that, and they were doing that because they were over $100,000 deals at that time. Now they're selling over $500,000 or $1 million in deals. Yeah. But at that time, that's what they started. So their motion was very targeted ABM motion led by an ecosystem that they were creating at the same time. So I think it's never the 1 and 2, but I think there is that 1-2 punch that makes sense, but one without the other doesn't work. You can't have a product company and no category. Like, you will fail. You can't have a great outbound thing with absolutely no ecosystem or channel. You will fail. It's like those I think 2 things do go hand in hand.
Okay. All right. Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the metrics a little. We talked early about, hey, what do they mean? But as a marketer, how can I be focused on growing that GRR and that NRR number? Like, I would, what do I need to do? Because initially, I think most marketers are like, okay, great, that's CS's problem. You know? That's CS's problem, when it's not. Like, everybody should be on the revenue team.
Yeah. One of the things that we have been teaching as part of our roadshows, Billy, is this, it's almost a therapy moment for everybody to just take in and recognize this. Every time, even the call that I was right before this with the CMO of this $100 million company, is saying that, well, we got a sales problem. And I'm telling her that I don't think it's a sales problem. This is a market condition right now. So to pin it on sales is to really minimize where the problem is a market problem. And we need to now, as a go-to-market team, need to think about how we're going to solve that problem. So very quickly, I think we're quick to dismiss and point fingers saying, oh, it's a marketing problem, go create a new messaging. Oh, it's a sales problems, go hire better sales reps. Or it's a CS problem because we're churning customers, where the problem is that our products don't support enterprise. And that's why so it's a product problem. So a lot of times people say this. So here's a therapy moment that we have done in every workshop, to say it out loud. And so people may try that at home as they're listening to this thing, and say it out loud and say it to the team meeting. Whenever you go in a meeting, this specific set of sentences, it's like the creed out there. It's simply as this, like, we don't have a marketing problem. We don't have a sales problem. We don't have a CS problem. What we have is a go-to-market problem. So let's now focus on what is the go-to-market problem we have. And that allows everybody on the team to take a moment, instead of putting on their save me jacket, they put in how do I help you jacket. And that's what you want. So if everybody can take one thing from this conversation, is to just have a broader conversation in that meeting. Bring your sales, marketing, CS product, not to say you sucked, but rather to say, we have a go-to-market problem. What can we do to solve that? Maybe we need to add a new feature. Maybe we need to change the way we do compensation. Maybe we need to change our messaging. It could be any one of those solutions, but just because sales are not closing right now because of market condition, it's a bad time to point to sales.
I like it. Because it's not their fault. This is the market conditions. What everyone needs to get on the boat and say, okay, what can we do to help move these deals across the finish line, or what can we do to help grow customers? And sometimes it's messaging, sometimes it's a product problem. You're like, you talked about earlier, oh, they're churning out, we don't support enterprise. Okay, like what do we need to add if we're actually going to go down this road to support enterprise? Or they're churning out because they're too small. It's like, well, they don't, we actually need like 3 or 4 people in a marketing team to make this product work, otherwise it just doesn't make sense for them. So,
what's also interesting, Billy, I don't know if you noticed that, but product a lot of times is not even in the room to work. A lot of times people in the go-to-market will, it's marketing, sales, and CS. But as you rightly pointed out, product might very well be the cause or the reason or maybe a solution to the problem that you're having right now. They may be able to come up with like, what? Okay, that's the problem. If you're not closing deal, but we can get more people on the trials, maybe we can turn off some features, come up with a new slimmed down light version of our product and get those people early on, give them 3 months of time to test it and then convert them in queue. Like that product could be the solution, but nobody's even talking to them. They're not even in the room a lot of times.
Yeah, unfortunately they aren't. And like, I've even made the mistake of like, hey, we talk about this, but and I run product here at Signals, but my engineering team has a lot of great ideas, is what I've found. And when we started bringing them in, and we go through once a month and we look at everything that's closed out of pipeline, whether it was won or lost, like why did we win it? Why did we lose it? And often our director of engineering, he'll be like, hey, it seems like this is a problem. I think it's actually a super easy fix within product. Like, I think we could roll this out this week, give me a week and we can have that fixed. And that's helped a lot. So if you're not including your product and your engineering team, because even, even just like the product guy who's like, hey, like this is what we need to do, bring that engineering leader in, because they know how it's really made, how that sausage is made. And they can tell you, oh, easy things to do. Like I can get these done if I have my team even stay late tonight. Sometimes they're that simple. And bring them in, and they'll help you. I think anyone, if you're not doing it, you'll be surprised.
Yeah, you will be pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit. We've got, we can go over, we can do whatever we want here, but let's talk about some of the tactics that you're seeing people are doing to help move deals down the funnel right now. Because one of the things that I've noticed from all of our sessions today is I'm hearing from leaders, the top of the funnel is as good as it's ever been, maybe even better for some companies when it comes to sales ops. Getting them all the way through and to closed one is harder than it's been in recent memory. So what do you think people can be doing to move them from, this is a qualified or net new op to this is closed one business?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And it's something that everybody's thinking and struggling with. One of the things we are trying and testing, and it seems to be working right now, not 100%, but we're testing and doing, is our sales leader, he is literally creating a video of the walking through the proposal. Because a lot of times what we found is like, oh, they're excited, oh, they're ready to sign, and they got the budget and all that stuff, and then boom, there's nothing. And like, we all have been in those moments, like, what happened? Did we not communicate? Like, where are we? So there are 2 things that he has done that has really been amazing. Number one, he would always have a follow-up meeting set. He would never leave a call without a meeting set on the calendar. And number 2, and with an agenda, here's where we will be, and here's what we would do, and here's what I'll do. So he was very good about making sure there's just conversations set up. And number 2, in between, he's sending a video, like 2-minute, saying, hey, we just talked through this proposal. Let me just walk you through what the proposal looked like. Because a lot of times now, more than ever, people have to go and sell internally. Even if they believe and they're champions for it, they have to go sell it to the CFO, sell it to the CEO, sell it to 10 other people. So he's like, hey, I get it. And you're the champion for it. I'm going to help you sell. So he will do a 2-minute, very short video of walking through the proposal of what they get and what that includes and how it is a super value add and what we're adding and giving them in addition to what they have asked, so they feel like they're getting a good deal, because everybody likes a good deal. So you would do that 2-minute video, and what we see is people are now sharing that internally. So we'll see like 5 plays on that video. So we know that, okay, it's at least at a minimum, it's getting internally shared. So we know what's going on behind the scenes, at least, from a metric perspective. And so both of those things are allowing the conversation to either get a necessary yes or necessary no, as opposed to a dark place, like where you have no idea what's going on. So I think I would recommend people to try both of those things.
I like the video proposal, and like getting the meeting on calendar. Like that's just old school sale. Like, like you don't leave a call without next steps. Like, but you'd be surprised how often like we leave a call and I'll talk to my sales team. We're like, hey, great. They're like, oh, great call, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, good. When's the next call?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or like, no, I'm going to send an email. Like, no, nobody responds.
No.
Else to get a time, and nobody has time. Like, it's just so little, but it's such an impactful thing. And you're right. It's an old school 101, but super valuable.
Super valuable. And the video proposals, I used to do them when we were first starting. Whenever I'd send a proposal out, I would use Loom and just like, 1 minute, here's what it is, walking you through everything. And I thought it was great. It let people just, even if it was just to the person and I was already talking to the signer, they've got a million things on their plate. It's easy to go back and watch a 1 to 2 minute video.
Right.
And then you mentioned one other tactic you guys have been helping people use, which is ROI studies. Like, I think more than ever, you're going to see the CFO getting involved in almost any deal over the next 12 to 18 months. And they're going to want to know, what's the return on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the analyst firm that we launched, GTM Partners, we're doing like 50 or so ROI studies now for companies to really share what is out of the. I mean, that's the one question that's behind everybody's mind right now. Like, why should I buy this? It's not that you don't like people or you don't like. I mean, a lot of it is true. But if you don't know, and if you can't very easily and quickly give an ROI story, it's gone. And if it's not a third-party validation, then you can say all day long we're the best product, we're the industry leader. It's like noise. So for a lot of our customers, Sendoso, Salesloft, OpenPrice, all of these companies, we are creating ROI study and launching that. And it's literally one of the best things they're using from a sales outreach perspective.
So are you guys going to customers, interviewing them, getting the data, putting it together, because like there's a lot of ways to do these ROI studies. And how do let's help our whoever is here and watching, like, if you want to go do an ROI study down and dirty and get something to arm your sales team with, what do you think they should be doing?
Oh, great question. So the way we do it is we literally have partnership with G2 that allows us to look at behind the scenes data, reviews, and look at the actual data of which companies are winning, losing. So we have a little bit extra analysis of it. So we look at that. We look at Vembora data, looking at what does the intent look like. We have a ton of different data elements that allows us to have a very quantifiable, third-party validated analysis of saying, well, here's what your time to value is based on just hundreds of reviews already available, right? But with a stamp of a third party. But then if somebody wants to just do this by themselves, absolutely use G2. Ask your customers quantifiable things that you can use, and then have stories around it. But one of the most important thing that I see missed are the use cases. What is the use case for which that ROI made sense? So we would layer on very clearly defined use cases like mid-market use case, enterprise use case, financial services use case. So when you're talking to a direct customer who is in that industry or in that size, it will speak directly to them. A lot of times ROI studies are very generic, and like, I don't even know if it matters to me. So you need to get a little bit more direct and focused on it.
I like it. And then I think a lot of times, like, we've all seen the ROI calculator that they'll send you, in a fancy spreadsheet, or it's on the website. Personally, I'm not a fan of sending those out, because it just seems like you can manipulate it to be whatever you want, But I like the study where you're actually talking to customers and say, hey, for X use case, because hopefully your product's got more than one use case.
Right. And that's what you want to let people know is like, okay, it's more expansive than I thought, or it's more deeper than I thought, or it's more insightful than I thought. And I think that's what you want for that next conversation to happen.
I like it. Okay, Sangram, anything that I should have asked you if you're like, hey, if this Billy guy was smart, he would have asked me this question before we break.
No, man, I think you did great. As a matter of fact, as a gift, because this was such a fun conversation, if anybody wants to follow me and send me a note on LinkedIn, I will send you a copy of the Move book. Sendoso bought 2,000 copies of the book, and so I'm just wanting to give that away. So shout out to Sendoso for buying the book, and anybody who's listening, if this is worth and you want to go to market to the next, it would be a free gift from me and Sendoso, and we'll ship it to you.
Awesome. Thanks. I've read the book. It's great. So go ahead, get the book. Take him up on this offer, guys. So,
awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Sangram. And then stick around. I know we've got Pete's going to wrap up our live session for Demand Gen. And thanks for joining us for the Demand Gen Summit.
All right. Thanks, Billy. Thanks, everyone.
I just realized my mic was muted, so that helps, right? Thank you for sticking with me there. But again, I was just thanking Sangram and Billy for being with us and sharing those insights. And one reoccurring topic that I felt was brought up between all the speakers that I've listened to today is that collaboration, that team collaboration, to be able to identify problems and know how to solve it. Not necessarily the pointing of the finger or marketing telling sales, hey, you need to do this, and sales saying, well, we would if marketing would do X, Y, and Z. It's about that collaboration, that teamwork. As John Miller was bringing up, it's about playing that football game. How are you going to move the ball through into the end zone, right? So with that said, and to kind of wrap some things up, if you haven't seen it yet, we do have our Demand Gen blueprint. It is offering. It's at demandgensummit.com. This has been a live presentation with the last couple of speakers, broadcasted on LinkedIn, YouTube, and the event site. Again, demandgensummit.com. You will be able to see all the recordings, and including this live session will be posted to that site and available for on-demand access 30 days after the event. I would like to take this time, though, to go over the offering and show a little bit of what it's about. Now, if you've already registered for the event, you simply need to click the button that you'd like to obtain it, and it will be emailed to you. If you haven't registered, we'll ask you for your email, and then we'll email that piece of content over to you. So with that said, allow me to share this diagram here of what that blueprint looks like. Now, before we dive into this, I used to work in the construction industry. And I was a project manager for a remodeling firm, and we talked a lot about design build. So what is design build? Well, that means that we have a contractor and a designer work together to be able to deliver the outcome that a client is looking for. And then that might include the expense, that might include what the design looks like, what era it's coming from, what's actually being remodeled or built. And so that is what's referred to as design build. And as I was thinking about that concept, it occurred to me, a lot of times what we're seeing within teams, with the sales team and the marketing team, our sales team's kind of like those contractors, right? They're getting out there, they're making the phone calls, they're doing those one-on-one interactions. The marketing team is kind of like the design team, right? We're kind of in the background. We're getting the automation set up, we're getting personalized messaging and content, you're getting the ads put out there. But if there's not a collaboration, if the contractor simply began working on the remodel of the kitchen, and the designer had a completely different output, and the buyer or the client had a different idea, you're going to end up with a mess. And I think that can somewhat relate to some of the examples we've heard from today, both from our great speakers, both live and pre-recorded. And it's that collaboration we need to see. So in that effort from this blueprint, you'll see an example of what can be put together in your demand gen program to show the value of working together to make an outcome turn out the way that you're looking to set it. Now, one thing that I'll bring up from one of our speakers today, when they were talking about ABM and demand generation, they mentioned, and this is from Declan with strategic ABM, said, look, when you're setting up your ABM journey, and I'm reading this from his script that I was able to get from his presentation, you got to define the outcomes to be sure that everyone's on board with what those outcomes are and that they're realistic expectations. I don't believe that that's meant just for the marketing team. I'd say that means the entire organization, the leadership team, the sales team, the customer success team. And so we talk a little bit about that concept in this blueprint. And again, you'll find it at demandgensummit.com. But here we're talking about some of the gears, right? In that example, if you're looking at a demand gen program, and we call it different things, we've heard some mentions of it being a tiered one or a higher tiered account. Other times there'll be assigned names, a strategic, a targeted, or the other accounts, the remaining accounts. It's important to have those defined and then understand where is marketing leading, where is sales leading, and where are we working together to collaborate. One thing I really like that John Miller mentioned was that they have an account stand-up where the sales agent or the account executive comes over and they meet with marketing. They say, hey, look, these are my accounts I'm working. Where are you guys at, right? What support are you doing? How can I collaborate with you? And marketing is working, seeing how they can work with sales to deliver either the intent data or the brand awareness or what have you to help progress those accounts. And so you'll see that mentioned here in this blueprint of defining throughout, and this is an example of an overview, but we're going to define what is a strategic account. Well, in this example that we define, it's your one-on-one conversations. These are usually sales-led and marketing supported. So what we're really trying to do is, sales is working and selling to an account, right? Usually this is maybe an open opportunity, but then they're sending those emails, they're making the phone calls, but then marketing is going to help build that awareness with the buying committee, the other folks in the background that sales isn't talking to make them help get them aware of what your product is, what your brand is, so that when they're brought into that discussion further down the opportunity stage, it's not a surprise that they're already aware of the sale opportunity or the organization, the value, and the pain points that they're addressing. Next, you'll see our targeted accounts. And again, just to be brief, a lot more here, but this can be found at demandgensummit.com. Toward the middle of the screen or any of the pages, you'll find that offer there, and it can be emailed to you. But in our targeted accounts here, we're talking about the one to few. So this is a close-knit collaboration between marketing and sales. And this is, again, you're shooting for personalized content. Marketing is getting some email automation to try to get another champion or maybe more of the buying committee on board the account so the sales rep can then qualify this account as an open opportunity perhaps. And then the sales agent is aware of the nurture lead campaigns and the display ads and the other PPC that may be going on to be able to build, again, the awareness and the collaboration to match the buyer's journey. So when you have that collaboration and it's matching the buyer journey, I'm going to go back to my example of design build. Now you're working together. You got the designer, the contractor working together. They bring in the client. In this case, the client could mean the leadership team, or maybe the client represents your actual buying committee or the account itself. We say, hey, look, what is it the client's wanting? What brought them to us in the first place? How can we address that issue? If it's a kitchen, for example, they want a bigger kitchen. Okay, what are the other necessities that have to be there? And so this is some of the things that we're looking at with targeted accounts, right? These accounts come in, we realize they match ICP, that there's an opportunity that could be there, but now what are their pain points? What brought them to us? What has gotten them into the customer journey up to this point for us to place them in a targeted account? And how can we address that to progress, again, the account further down the funnel? In this case, we refer to it as strategic account, but maybe you have that defined in a different way. But at the end of the day, it's an open opportunity that we believe it could be a good fit to become a client. Finally, you'll see where we talk about remaining accounts. So this is your one-to-many approach. This approach is going to be mainly marketing-led, and sales is going to take a little backseat here because they're busy with those strategic and targeted accounts. So marketing is going to take lead. This is mainly going to be your traditional lead generation plays, your broad demand gen, your events, your emails, your white papers that you're putting out there, your in-person events and so forth. This is where you're casting that wide net. You're trying to target a good audience. And as we've mentioned several times before, just because they download the white paper, that doesn't mean they're a targeted account. But this is where marketing can use automation tools wisely and skilled professionals to say, okay, from this last campaign we ran, we now have an X number amount of accounts that have addressed us. Now, which ones are targeted? Which ones match ICP? Who are we going to go out there and refish again, or who are we going to move over to sales as a targeted account and collaborate with sales if that should happen or not? And again, this is meant to focus resources. If we took all our resources and we focused it evenly between remaining accounts or beginning stage or funnel accounts, and then we put an equal amount of resources into targeted and then an equal amount into your strategic or your open opportunities, you'd be wasting resources, because you want to put those resources where the accounts are ready to close. And you want to attribute those correctly and justify the spend, the time, both in marketing and sales and that of the organization, to know when the right time is to engage. Finally, you'll learn a little bit more about us. If this is you just tuning in, you may have heard that we have changed our name, or we've rebranded. We were Chat Funnels, now as Signals. You can read a little bit more about that, both on our website, the founder's letter of what that means, Signals for us, how the company vision has shifted and come to its real focus of delivering those signals to our clients. So this is what I have in the white paper. Again, please check it out, demandgensummit.com to download that. And finally, I'll give one last shout out here to our award winners who have participated. Again, I shared a little bit today. Excuse me, I'm flipping through some of my slides here, but shared today that this is by far the most crowd of votes that we've ever had. We had a lot of competition going on. We're just super excited for all the nominees that came in and those that played the game, that got the votes, that did the work behind the scenes, and we're proud to recognize them again. So loosely here, we have our demand gen and sales leaders, Mark, Chris, and Tamara. Super excited for you. Congratulations. And again, this will be announced both in our social media and through a press release. Our demand gen practitioners of Vonda, Mary, and Michelle. Again, congratulations. Super excited to be able to recognize you three and your efforts from our crowd nomination. Now, this is a new category for us, marketing podcast. We had Let's Talk ABM with our most votes. Next in, we had Science of B2B from 6 Sense there. And then finally, Driving Demand. So again, congratulations. These are all great podcasts. I know I've listened to several episodes from each of these, so if you haven't checked them out, it may be worth your time there. And then finally, our thought leaders. 6 Sense came in really strong here, and we're super excited to recognize Saima Latney and James with Flip, formerly known as Red Route. So again, congratulations. Thank you so much for your participation in our event, in our live feed. We will have, or we've had another block release, and this is our final release of pre-recorded presentations put together by some great, knowledgeable experts, both in sales, marketing, as founders and leaders in the organization, that share their insights, their experiences, and how we can address demand generation, go-to-market strategies, and set ourselves up for success in 2023. As a reminder, these presentations will be made available for on-demand access for the next 30 days, as well as the keynote presentation. You'll find that, again, at demandgensummit.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, thank you again for your time. A huge thank you to our speakers and all the value that they've given. Several of them have mentioned both by email or social media or even in their presentations that, hey, if you're looking for some mentorship, you're looking for some help in the strategy or tactics or trying to solve a problem, that they're more than happy for you to reach out to them via LinkedIn in most cases for them and ask, because they have the experience, they're willing to share. So thank you again to our speakers who have made this possible. Also, a huge thank you and shout out to our sponsor at Demand Base. We heard from John Miller, the CMO, just a fantastic organization. If you didn't hear, but John Miller has a book that he put out called Unspam Your Brand. You can check that out at demandbase.com. And again, this event has been hosted by Signals. Thank you again, and please enjoy the rest of the presentations as they're made available through the rest of the day.